Johnny Jett, you've been called the original travel influencer by Forbes magazine. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to join me today on the Fact Up podcast.
Well, thank you for having me.
You've made appearances all over the world, my man, talking everything travel. You're kind of a big deal, Johnny Jett. But for those who don't know who Johnny Jett is and what JohnnyJett.com is all about, give us a brief overview.
Well, can you tell my wife that I'm a big deal? Because she doesn't know that.
Get her on. Let's do it.
Anyway, I have a long story. I grew up in Connecticut, used to be afraid to fly. I got over my fear. I was not only afraid to fly, I was afraid to leave the house. And then when I got over it, I just got addicted to flying. I went to school in California where I am now. I dated a girl whose parents lived all around the world, and she invited me to Singapore the first summer, and I was like, I couldn't go. I gave her some lame excuse, but the real reason was I was afraid to do that flight.
Right.
One reason was because I was diagnosed with asthma, and my doctor's like, you might have an asthma attack on the plane. It's a long story. But anyway, the next summer she invited me to Hong Kong. I went. I just fell in love with travel. I got addicted to it, got addicted to my miles, and I took a job. My first job out of college was working at a college, recruiting and traveling all over the U.S. And, once you fly up front, because on that ticket to Hong Kong, I was able to buy a business class ticket because she only flew business class.
Right.
And once you go up front, man, it's tough to go in the back. So I learned all the tricks on how to fly, in style, but really on a pauper's budget. And, the internet was brand new. This is 1995. So I just started sharing my secrets with all my friends.
Right.
And it just took off. They started forwarding it to their friends. Then I had one of our student workers make me a website. And next thing you know, within 3 weeks, USA Today wrote about it. And once they wrote about it, it just took off. People would call me up and say, turn on the TV. You're right now, your website of the week on CNBC's Power Lunch. And I'm like, you're joking.
Wow. That's a big deal. But what do you say to that person that, somebody gets told you can't fly or you can't travel or you shouldn't take that first step? What do you say to that person now getting inspired by what you've done over the past 25 years?
Well, you mean in terms of people who want to do what I do for a living, or
generally speaking? I feel like COVID is one of those turning point, eras where opportunities are there to reinvent yourself. But at the same time, yes, on the flip side, there's a legitimate fear and anxiety. Absolutely. But for those who are crippled in a way with the anxiety, but they really want to push themselves to take that step, what are your words of inspiration for them?
Well, I get emails all the time. But first of all, because of COVID, I have not been on a plane since February. Right. The longest I've gone before this was 3 to 4 weeks. I haven't been on a plane in almost a year.
It's killing you.
Totally. I mean, I would usually fly 3 times a week.
Right.
So, and then I would have people saying, listen, how can I do what I do? I always tell people to follow their passion. If it's in terms of business, go to travel conferences and network. But if it's people who are just afraid to travel, or, I just tell people, you know what, your chances of dying or whatever your fear is, if you're claustrophobic or dying in a plane crash, you just look at all the stats. And that's what got over my fear, because I was afraid of all that. I was asked flight attendants, and I actually started dating a flight attendant at one time. And you realize how much these guys and girls fly, obviously. Right. You just realize that it's so safe, and the numbers, I remember one time landing from London at LAX, and the pilot got on the horn and said, your safest part of your journey is now over. Be careful on the 405.
Right.
And they're right. Most pilots are scared of driving and not flying.
Well, the term influencer is being, thrown around quite a bit over the past 5, 10, even 15 years. How has the term influencer changed from when you got started to how it's being used today?
Well, the term wasn't even around. Even in Blogger, first, in 2004, they started using Travel Blogger, and I started in 1995.
Right.
And I went with it because, it's the buzz term, and that's what people like to hear: travel blogger, travel influencer. But these days, travel influencer seems to be a negative connotation. But still what gets me some jobs, because people are Googling it or whatever, and they hire me. So I do go with it, but I consider myself a travel publisher.
What movie represents what's happening in the travel industry right now and in the foreseeable future?
What movie?
What movie? Song is also optional. If music's your thing more than movies, what song represent? But I'll start with movie.
Well, music is not my thing. You do not want to hear me sing or dance or watch me dance. For the last 9 months or so, I've been telling people not to fly or travel. Listen to the experts. Let's just get over this. And that's always been the opposite of what I tell people. I would always tell people, listen, the more people travel, especially internationally, the less prejudices there will be in the world. And I truly believe that. And so I've always been about get out, see the world, go to one new country a year. So if you're 50 years old, you've been to 50 countries. Movie would be like something like Earthquake, man. It's just like, it's just crazy what's going on in the world.
Change of pace. I'll give you a quote. The best way to use your miles is to take your mom to Europe, end quote. How did that quote come to be, Johnny? And how does that trip with your mom still inspire you today?
Oh, well, that's one of my best trips of all time. So again, growing up, we didn't travel much at all. I mean, I flew a handful of times. My mom was the most unselfish person in the world. She won a scholarship to Parsons to design dresses. And she would always tell me that, she didn't go because she decided to design a family instead of dresses. And she never went to Europe, and it was her dream. And when she was diagnosed with cancer, and I just started traveling, I started earning all these miles, I just cashed in my miles, and I said, Mom, you got to go see Europe. She always talked about where her father was born in Denmark, and that, Paris, where she was going to do the scholarship. And we did it. And she took off time from chemo, and we went. And the following year, we did it again. And, we landed in Denmark, and she was crying, and I started crying because she never thought she would see it. And it was all because I was able to use my miles and points, and she flew first class for the first time. And I'm just so thankful for that. Unfortunately, my mom passed away a couple of years later from cancer. But my point is, don't bank your miles and points, because they're not like money. They don't gain, they lose value. And you spend it on someone you love and do it in style. You don't want to buy a ticket from like Toronto to New York using miles. You want to use it for Toronto to Europe,
Tokyo,
or whatever,
yeah,
or Asia.
yeah, bigger.
And do it in style. A business class ticket that would normally be $10,000.
Yeah, that's right. Well, full disclosure, if anyone's inclined to go to johnnyjet.com, and I really encourage you to go, there's a special, tribute to your mom on the bottom, and I was reading that yesterday. Full disclosure, I cried, man. I'm a huge mama's boy too, in the sense of I look at the disadvantages and the priorities that mom had and dad when I was a kid, and now that I've become this person, I'm able to provide something, fulfill a dream to take my biggest fan, so to speak, on a trip of a lifetime. So full disclosure, that brought me to tears.
Well,
it's a great story.
I cried writing it, honestly.
I believe it. Well, 9/11, changed travel 20 years ago. It's hard to believe that it's already been 20 years. How does COVID change travel now? What can we expect to see as ongoing trends? You mentioned masks going forward, but what does travel look like now, from everything from checking in at the airport to, the plane experience, even the hotel experience?
Yeah. Are you talking short term or long term?
I'm talking short term.
Okay. Because everything right now is trying to go contactless. Before, it was all about service. Like if you stayed at, if you're a freaking flyer, you wanted someone to escort you onto the plane. Now you don't want anyone to go near you. If you checked into a hotel, that you want people to escort you. Now it's going to be all contactless. You do it on your phone, you check in, you can check your bags yourself. And by the way, one of the best travel tips is never to check bags, just do carry on only. And before I had kids, I would never check bags. My wife and I would go around the world trips with just carry on only for even a month at a time.
Yeah.
But with kids, by the way, it's a lot different.
Yeah.
I have a U-Haul truck with me.
Right.
But it's all going to be contactless. So the less people, you don't touch anyone. There's going to be facial recognition. There's already in some airports, even in the U.S. But I think that's the future. Biometrics, and trying to just make it as smooth as possible and fast. You can order your food, to have it delivered, instead of long queues.
Right.
I have Nexus and Global Entry and TSA Pre, and I think hopefully more people will get that because they don't want to wait in lines.
Right. Like, are we getting to the airport sooner, even sooner than maybe 3-4 hours before?
I hear mixed. Again, I haven't flown since February, so I don't know for sure. But I have friends that show up really early because they want to avoid the lines, and also show people who show up at the last minute because they don't want to be in the airport at all.
Right.
But if I was in the airport right now, showing up early, or my flight was delayed, I would, since a lot of the airports are really empty, I would walk down to a gate that's that's vacant and just hang out there. And that's what I did actually before.
Mhm.
If I didn't have access to a lounge, I would do that.
Right, right. You talk a lot about miles, you talk a lot about points, you also talk a lot about travel insurance. What should people come to know when it comes to travel insurance going forward? What questions should they be asking, when they're planning a trip? And what fine print should they be looking out for as well?
Well, that's the key right there. No matter what insurance you buy, always read the fine print, because not everything's covered, and COVID's not covered for the most part. I mean, there are certain policies, but those are really expensive, and it's usually not worth it. But some airlines are offering it, like Etihad, and I think Emirates does. They even offer it in the ticket that you purchase. So, but if you're listen, full disclosure, I've been a global brand ambassador for Allianz Travel Insurance.
Mm-hmm.
I was up until the pandemic, but I still am a big fan of them. But you have to read the fine print no matter what, because not everything's covered. I also use MedJet Assist. What that will do is they will send you to a hospital wherever you want if you're 100 miles away from home. So if you're in Africa and you break your leg or whatever, they'll either get you a first class seat, or they'll get you a private ambulance plane, which would normally be like $150,000.
Right.
But again, you got to read the fine print, because not everything's covered. Some of it, if you snorkel or if you scuba dive, it might not be covered.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you jump out of a plane, it might not be covered.
Right.
Skydiving.
Right. You need to read the fine print, but we're just short of having a lawyer look it over, right?
Exactly. That's the problem, because it's so long. Who wants to read it? I don't even want to read it. But
right.
It's what you really got to do with anything. And when you're buying plane tickets these days, you want to make sure you read the fine print. Make sure that you can, get it fully refunded if you don't want to travel for whatever reason.
Right. I mean, there is good coming out of this. What good comes out of this with respect to the travel industry, and what positives are we taking away going forward as well?
I think there's a lot, actually. Before this happened, everyone was concerned about over tourism. Now it's under tourism. Now people are like, but I think a lot of the world needed this reset, just for the environment, and also, not so many planes and cruise ships and people just destroying the place.
Yeah.
Also, what I think, one of my pet peeves for flying before this, people would sneeze or cough without covering their mouth. They were just rude. And I think these days, I'm hoping that that's gone, because if you did that today, you'd probably get punched in the head or shot.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping people will now, be more hygienic.
Yeah. Where have you found inspiration over the past year, Johnny?
Where have I found inspiration? I've been reading a lot and watching all these different people. I used to be a travel writer that didn't travel because he had kids, and I thought it was so weird that he was a travel writer because he never traveled. And now I have 2 young kids, and I haven't traveled in a year. I was traveling with them, but you can still travel. You can do a lot of virtual travel.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I go on YouTube and check out these webcams all around the world. You can even do an African safari. And I did it last night with my kids. They're like, can we watch the African safari? And they'll take you actually on a tour. You can actually even hire them to do a private tour where you can actually ask questions. Or you can just check out these webcams from around the world and just check it out, or listen to the guides talking to other people.
Right. That sounds terrible.
I love that. That's where I get my travel fix these days.
Right. Yeah. And you're fueling that wanderlust, man. That's crazy good.
Totally.
10 rapid fire questions with Johnny Jet. Nothing rapid about it, Johnny. All right. Take your time. But here we go. You ready?
Yep.
Describe your travel style in one word. That's why there's nothing rapid about it. Smooth. You have a history degree at Loyola Marymount University in LA. How has that history degree helped you in your career?
Do you need one word for this?
No.
Okay, good. Because I was like, I do not have one. You know what? I think that with the history degree, what it really does is just, it's a Bachelor of Arts, and it just teaches you how to read, write, and communicate. So it's not just about history, because I forgot a lot of the history, to be honest.
Right.
But it just does teach you all these different things, these life skills.
Communication is by far the biggest one for me.
For sure. And before this, when I was in college, I remember when they asked me to go up and give a presentation in the classroom, and I was so nervous. And my teacher then was from from Africa. Actually, he was Manute Bol's uncle.
Wow.
And he gave me life words. He's like, listen, I know you're nervous, but don't worry. After 5 minutes, it will go away. And also use that energy, that nervous energy, and put it towards positive. And I've done, millions of TV interviews. I've spoken in front of huge crowds. And I always think back to him, God rest his soul, that, those are the kinds of things you learn in college and that with a history degree.
That's awesome. One place close to home where you've been finding your zen?
The beach. It's where we go fortunately I live in Los Angeles, so it can be warm. Like yesterday was 75 degrees. Today's a little chilly, but we'd go to the beach, take the kids, and that's just where I just zone out. And awesome. And we go when there's no one there. We go during the week.
Right. Is there a place in the world that speaks to you on a culinary level?
Southeast Asia. I love Southeast Asia. Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, or Italy. I'm half Italian. Yep. I mean, without a doubt, those are my places. I could just sit there. I love food, and my belly will prove it.
Right.
I don't want to scare your viewers if you're.
No, I expose stuff, not here specifically, but my viewers know. One thing you hate about travel?
One thing I hate about travel, I hate rude people. I really do, and it seems to be more and more people like that. I remember before the pandemic hit, I was on a flying. Actually, it happens all the time. People are talking on FaceTime. They're watching movies without their earbuds, and I'm like, dude, what? I'm almost getting in fights. I asked them politely. Where are you from? Do you think I want to watch your TV from 4 rows away?
Worst meal you've had on a plane?
Worst meal? Man, there's been a lot. I don't know which one to choose. But I'm not a real big foodie. So, I always seem to like it. People are like, this is disgusting. I'm like, can I have it? And I'll just sit here and eat it. Again, bring it back to my belly. But the worst meal I've ever had on a plane, man.
There's been a lot.
I can't even remember, but there's been a few.
There's been a few. Why do you travel, Johnny? Why?
Well, again, I used to be afraid, so it's my escape. And I just remember when I was in college, and I never traveled internationally until my 3rd year, I think, in college. But I remember the teacher would ask, has everyone ever been to this country? And this one guy kept raising his hand, and most of the people in the class were raising their hands, and I never raised my hand. And when I first went to Hong Kong, I just got over my fear, and I just had this monkey off my back. And I just love to meet people. It's really about the people, learning about different cultures. Again, I do, as corny as it sounds, I really think that the more people travel internationally, the less prejudices there will be. And also the fears. You're watching the news here, I was always thinking, my God, I'm going to get shot or get my throat cut in this country where I'm going. And then I realized when I get there, I feel safer there than I do in America. So that's why I travel.
What would you tell 17-year-old Johnny Jett?
That's a good question. 17 was a rough year for me. That's when I was really, really full of fear. And I would just be like, you know what? The next 3 years are going to be rough, but it's going to be great after that. And it's been nothing but, I'm fortunate because I have the most unbelievable life and job. I don't have to wake up to an alarm like I used to. I can go wherever I want. I can work wherever I want, or I used to be able to. I would travel to 20 countries a year, and I would work. I work everywhere. Mm-hmm. People would say, I traveled with some of my friends. Are like, man, you work harder than anyone I know. I work the whole flights, but if you want to have this dream job, you got to earn it, and you got to keep working. But
that's right.
I'm allowed to spend time with my family and friends whenever I want, and that's the key for me.
Yeah. 3 guilty pleasures that you pack on every trip.
Well, one of my travel tips is always bring 3 bags of chocolate, like Hershey Kisses. Okay. 1 for the gate agents, 1 for the flight attendants, and 1 for yourself. And so that's how you get treated like a champion. It won't get you upgraded like it used to, but they'll still treat you like a celebrity. And I've had flight attendants literally come up to me, and people are looking at me like, who the heck is this guy? And that's one of my tricks.
Wow, that's like tipping the bartender an extra 20 so you get the best service all night.
Well, you know what? It's amazing. You watch, next time you fly, you watch how passengers treat flight attendants. They're terrible. I dated one, so I know firsthand. All you have to do is smile and be nice to them, and they'll give you great service. But
Right.
you bring a bag of Hershey Kisses, they'll even be extra nice, usually.
Tricks of the trade, man. That's incredible. My last question.
All
What's
right.
one piece of advice your mom gave you that you're now passing on to your kids?
There's a couple. One is, always treat everyone with respect, no matter if they're the garbage man or the president. Treat them with the same respect, and that is instilled in me. You know, kindness is so important, especially these days. And also, if you can't beat them, join them.
Right. Johnny Jet, JohnnyJet.com. I want to thank you so much for taking the time today. I wish you and your family continued health and happiness, and stay strong and stay well, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. All the best.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.